I found a research chemical called BDPC, or Bromadol, on a vendor site, but there's very little reliable information available on this chemical. Very quickly, it's an RC opiate that is theoretically 500 times as strong as morphine. This means that an orally equianalgesic dose to 10 milligrams of morphine is 20 micrograms. I'm going to tell you right off the bat that if you are looking for one of those totally unbiased trip reports that are purely analytical, this is not one of them. I overdosed on this drug out of pure stupidity and recklessness. If you are one of those magic people who have a legit lab setup, not your kitchen, and who have never and would never use a chemical in an even slightly reckless way, then maybe my biased writing does not apply to you. But if you are not one of those magical people, then please heed the countless warnings that are going to be in this report. For your awareness, I have used the following opiates: morphine, hydromorphone, U47700, oxycodone, hydrocodone, and kratom. I am a 25-year-old male, 6 foot tall, and I weigh 205 pounds. I am reasonably athletic and I have no confounding drug allergies or sensitivities. I received a 500 milligram sample. While handling it, I always use gloves and clean workstations. Additionally, I kept 2 vials of Narcan on hand if I felt an overdose coming on. Utilizing volumetric dosing, I initially tried dissolving 20 milligrams of it in water. This was unsuccessful. The chemical forms a crystalline precipitate on top of the water. According to ChemSpider, this chemical is only soluble at approximately 2 milligrams per 1 liter of water. I then dissolved 15 milligrams at 375 milliliters of 100 proof vodka. This was successful and yielded a solution of 40 micrograms per milliliter. I first used this chemical via the rectal route. The onset of the chemical via this route is fast. Within 5 minutes, I felt the spread of the opiate through my system. It feels like the late stages of a U47700 high. There's absolutely no euphoria or warmth. With most opiates, at first I feel a liquid warmth flow through my body, accompanied by intense euphoria and followed by the stupor of the nod. Depending on the opiate, I then can easily fall asleep, hydrocodone, or I am pretty energetic, U47700. This felt like a cool, or at best, lukewarm flow through my body that totally skipped euphoria and went straight to an intensely apathetic nod. I dose via PR in 10, 20, 40, and 60 microgram doses. Regardless of the dose, the feeling did not change. Within a half an hour of administering the drug, there was an intense nausea onset. I am not someone who gets nauseous from opiates. The only opiate that has ever made me nauseous is kratom, and that was when I way overdid it. The nausea from BDPC stayed for the entire duration of the drug, which at the beginning of the use was 10 hours, but lessened to about 6 to 8 hours with repeated use. The nausea did lessen with repeated use, but it never went away. The intense nod lasted about an hour or so, and was followed by a traditional state of generally energetic apathy. It was impossible to sleep within 4 hours of taking it. Tolerance built up quickly. Within 3 days of dosing rectally, I could easily redose 20 to 40 micrograms in 4-hour intervals. I quickly grew sick of this drug. I was hoping that maybe once the nausea died down, the euphoria would show itself. Nope. So I decided to up the ante. I bought some propylene glycol and made a 60 microgram per milliliter solution for IV administration. IV dosing was similar to rectal dosing. Started low, but realized I could move up to 30 micrograms at once. The rush from taking this drug again completely lacked warmth or euphoria. It went into straight nod, lying on my bed for about 20 minutes with my eyes closed, not thinking or really feeling. Honestly, the rush felt a little like IV diphenhydramine, which was followed by a cold nod. Despite me really not liking this chemical, I really liked the feelings of being altered, addict, and I had a lot of trouble throwing out the material. so I went over a friend's house and enlisted their help in convincing me to dump the stuff. I threw the chemical out, flushed it down the toilet. Yup, I must have killed a million fishes, and I rinsed the baggie out and put it in my friend's trash. I hung out with my friend for the weekend, then on Monday they had to go to class. They weren't supposed to be back until around 2 p.m., and I woke up around 10. I was bored and I remembered the rinsed out baggie sitting in their trash. This is where the reckless, stupid addict part of me took control. I figured, hey, I've never taken this orally. The bag is rinsed out, so there's probably nothing in it. So why don't I try dunking it in a cup of water a couple times and drink that water? I stupidly figured first pass metabolism, plus not being able to see any amount of powder in the baggie meant that I probably wouldn't even get a buzz. So I dunked the baggie in water, drank it, and prepared myself for being disappointed. Within 15 minutes, I felt the drug coming on. I decided to lay down on my friend's bed to enjoy the nod while it lasted. The next thing I remember is waking up as the EMTs transferred me into the hospital bed. I took the drug around 10:45 a.m. My friend texted me when she got out of her first class to check in, and I didn't respond to her. She got worried, and instead of coming home at 2 p.m., she decided to drop by at 12 to check in. She found me, gray, with blue lips. I gasped for air a couple of times, and then I stopped breathing. She called 911, and they had her give me CPR. When I woke up being transferred into the hospital bed, the EMT looked at me and said, "You know you died, right? You weren't breathing." While I was conscious in the hospital, I received 3 doses of Narcan. I don't know how many doses they gave me on the scene and in the ambulance. Even after 3 repeat doses in the hospital, within 15 minutes of them giving me the Narcan, my oxygen saturation dropped and I began passing out. They then put me on a constant IV drip of Narcan, and they kept me on it for over 8 straight hours. When they weaned me off of it at night, I still had to be on oxygen. If I wasn't, my oxygen saturation dropped into the 70s. For young, healthy people, your oxygen saturation should really never be below 90%. I vomited repeatedly until they gave me some Zofran, and as soon as that wore off, I started vomiting again. The GI upset lasted for about 34 hours. The next day, I spent coughing up blood, my chest hurting, half from lung damage, half from CPR, and I had to force myself to do deep breathing. If I didn't, I started getting dizzy again. This drug is not to be messed with. I'm not some addict scared straight from their first overdose. I've been around this rodeo before, woken up in hospitals more times than I can care to admit. Never have I had to get that much Narcan. Never have I had to be on a constant drip for that long. Never have I not felt even a hint that I was going to overdose from oral use of an opiate. Usually with orally dosed opiates, I can tell on the ride up if it's going to be too much. There was no warning with BDPC. I went from a light feeling of a nod to being completely gone. I guess I didn't even make it to the bed. I remember walking over to it, but when my friend found me, I was lying on the bed, my face smashed into the top of the bedpost. I don't think I actually made it to the point of lying down. This is all from an invisible amount of a substance in a rinsed out baggie that I dunked into some water. There's no excuse for how reckless I was. There simply isn't, but I want to convey something here. If you're the type of person who under any circumstance uses a substance recklessly, please do not buy this chemical. One mess up and you're dead. Hell, if you sneeze when you're working with the powder, you might inhale some of it, and then you would die. Even if you clean the counter, there is no guarantee that you got all of it. I don't know how transdermally active it is. Frankly, just touching without gloves could be a death sentence in and of itself. I wrote this report because when I told the doctors in the hospital what I took, they couldn't find anything on the drug. Literally nothing. There's almost no history of human use. Right now, I'm probably one of the most well-educated people on this chemical. I've read 3 studies that have referenced it, and I am positive I've read every trip report and comment thread that exists about it. When this drug hits the street, and it will, the vendor's now supplying bulk quantities of it. I need people to know that it's a goddamn death sentence. This makes fentanylogs, with the exception of carfentanil, look like candy. With 20 micrograms being a pretty solid dose, and 500 milligrams alone, there were 25,000 doses of this drug, and the drug tests they gave me in the hospital were totally negative. BDPC did not register as an opiate on a hospital drug screen. This is a so far undetectable lethal opioid analog, and it's on its way. I hope if someone reads anything before trying this drug, they read this. It is not worth it. It's honestly not.